Arthur Sterling, a tycoon accustomed to having the world at his feet, would never have imagined that a daring bet made in a flash of arrogance would completely rewrite his story. He was a born winner, both in business and in personal life, and the adrenaline of competition was his fuel. But it was on a gala night in dazzling Viridian City that his close friend Ethan Thorne issued a challenge that took him by surprise. Ethan smiled mischievously, raising his champagne glass. "Arthur, let's see if you have the courage to accept this bet. I doubt you'd marry someone who doesn't fit your usual type." Arthur, known for his preference for stunningly beautiful and conventional women, felt a flicker of curiosity. He raised an eyebrow, an ironic smile playing on his lips, and asked what the reward would be. Ethan replied, $1 million for you if you agree to marry and remain married for at least 6 months to the woman I choose. The adrenaline of competition and the financial promise seduced Arthur. Without hesitation, he accepted. The woman Ethan had in mind was Elara Vance, someone who, in fact, did not fit the beauty standards Arthur valued. He didn't know her, but to him, it was just another deal to be won. A few days later, Arthur received more details about Elara. She was described as confident, independent, and with unshakable determination. Nothing like the women he usually charmed, and this somehow intrigued him. Accustomed to dictating the rules, Arthur found himself wondering how he would deal with someone who wouldn't bend to his will. Their first meeting was at a luxurious restaurant. As soon as Elara arrived, Arthur noticed the difference. She was not intimidated by the opulence of the surroundings or by his presence. On the contrary, her gaze met Arthur's with a steadfastness that surprised him. "You must be someone with a great deal of self-confidence, Arthur Sterling," Elara said directly as she sat down at the table. "And you must be Elara Vance," Arthur replied, extending his hand with a contained smile. She hesitated for a brief moment before shaking it firmly, a gesture that revealed her unbreakable determination. Without beating around the bush, Elara got straight to the point. "Honestly, I know exactly why we're here. I know the bet, the terms, and the conditions." Arthur was surprised by her frankness, but he didn't show it. "And yet you agreed to meet me?" he asked, genuinely curious about her motivations. Elara paused before answering. "Let's just say I have my reasons. I'm not naive, Arthur. 6 months may seem like a short time, but a lot can change. If you think you can manipulate or control me, you are sorely mistaken." Arthur smiled. Elara was proving to be a greater challenge than he had imagined, which only made the situation more interesting. By the end of the first meeting, Arthur found himself increasingly intrigued by Elara. She was unlike any woman he had ever met. She didn't fear him, and this further piqued his curiosity. Days turned into constant thoughts, and Arthur couldn't stop reflecting on how he would approach the next step. He was used to being the master of the game, but now it seemed Elara had her own cards up her sleeve. The second meeting took place in a simple, cozy cafe, a stark contrast to the glamorous restaurants Arthur usually frequented. Elara had suggested the place, and Arthur, curious, agreed. He wanted to understand her, to know why she had accepted what appeared to be a temporary marriage contract. When Arthur arrived, Elara was already there, enjoying a tea with a serene smile. She greeted him warmly, without the coldness of their first meeting, but maintaining the same unshakable confidence. "I thought you'd preferred a 5-star restaurant," Elara teased as Arthur sat down. "Sometimes it's good to break the routine," he replied, trying to appear at ease despite feeling a bit out of place. They chatted for a while, exchanging pleasantries, but Elara got straight to the point. "If we're really going through with this, I want to make a few things very clear," she said, placing her teacup on the table. "I'm not interested in your money or your luxurious lifestyle. 6 months are 6 months, and I intend to leave this exactly the same way I came into it." Arthur watched her intently. He knew she was being sincere. Elara was the kind of woman who knew what she wanted, and marriage was clearly not a means of social climbing for her as it would be for many others. "So, what do you want, Elara?" Arthur replied, genuinely intrigued. "Freedom," she replied without hesitation. "I need you to know that, even with this agreement, I will not be controlled by you." Arthur smiled. Elara was proving to be a greater challenge than he had imagined, which only made the situation more interesting. By the end of the first meeting, Arthur found himself increasingly intrigued by Elara. She was unlike any woman he had ever met. She didn't fear him, and this further piqued his curiosity. Days turned into constant thoughts, and Arthur couldn't stop reflecting on how he would approach the next step. He was used to being the master of the game, but now it seemed Elara had her own cards up her sleeve. The second meeting took place in a simple, cozy cafe, a stark contrast to the glamorous restaurants Arthur usually frequented. Elara had suggested the place, and Arthur, curious, agreed. He wanted to understand her, to know why she had accepted what appeared to be a temporary marriage contract. When Arthur arrived, Elara was already there, enjoying a tea with a serene smile. She greeted him warmly, without the coldness of their first meeting, but maintaining the same unshakable confidence. "I thought you'd preferred a five-star restaurant," Elara teased as Arthur sat down. "Sometimes it's good to break the routine," he replied, trying to appear at ease despite feeling a bit out of place. They chatted for a while, exchanging pleasantries, but Elara got straight to the point. "If we're really going through with this, I want to make a few things very clear," she said, placing her teacup on the table. "I'm not interested in your money or your luxurious lifestyle. 6 months are 6 months, and I intend to leave this exactly the same way I came into it." Arthur watched her intently. He knew she was being sincere. Elara was the kind of woman who knew what she wanted, and marriage was clearly not a means of social climbing for her, as it would be for many others. "So, what do you want, Elara?" Arthur replied without hesitation. "Freedom," she replied without hesitation. "I need you to know that, even with this agreement, I will not be controlled by you."
"I have my own life, and that won't change because of a temporary marriage." Arthur smiled. It wasn't the answer he expected, but at the same time, he didn't mind granting Elara this freedom. For him, marriage was just a formality to win the bet. If she wanted to maintain her independence, it wouldn't bother him. "All right," Arthur agreed. 6 months, and then each goes their own way." Elara watched him for an instant, as if to make sure she truly agreed to the terms. She had accepted that challenge with a plan in mind, and was determined to ensure everything went as planned. Deep down, she even wished Arthur would try to manipulate the situation, but she also trusted in her own strength to resist his influence. The meeting ended on friendly terms, with both leaving with their roles clearly defined. Elara would maintain her independence, and Arthur would ensure the marriage was nothing more than a formality. But as the days passed and the wedding date approached, Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps this game wasn't as simple as he had imagined. The wedding, as predicted, was cold and without ceremony, a carefully orchestrated business contract. With his strategic mind, Arthur Sterling already considered himself the winner of the bet. He was sure the 6 months would fly by, and that Elara, however stubborn she might be, would eventually yield to the luxurious lifestyle he would offer her. Soon after the ceremony, Arthur took Elara to his vast penthouse in the heart of Lumina City, a monument to his wealth. The immense glass windows reflected the city lights, and the interior was filled with the most expensive and exclusive decor. For him, that was the true battlefield, where he would conquer Elara through the power of his material world. But from the first moment, Elara made it clear she wouldn't back down. As soon as she entered the penthouse, she kept a certain distance. The look she cast Arthur was not one of admiration, but of defiance. 6 months, Arthur, not 1 day more, she said firmly, walking to one of the large windows and observing the city, unperturbed by the luxury around her. Arthur smiled, confident. He was used to the fact that, although they initially resisted, All women in his life eventually succumbed to his charm and wealth. Elara would be no different, or at least that's what he thought. In the first few days after the wedding, Arthur tried everything to impress her. He showered her with expensive jewels, designer clothes, and luxurious trips, expecting Elara to start adapting to the lifestyle he dictated. But to his frustration, she refused everything. Elara insisted on maintaining her simple and modest routine, never giving in to the luxuries of wealth. "I don't need these things, Arthur," she would say with a calm that only irritated him more. This bothered him deeply. Arthur, who always got everything he wanted, saw his authority challenged for the first time. It was no longer just about the bet. Now it was personal. He needed to conquer Elara somehow. He needed to prove that ultimately he was in control. It was then that he started playing more aggressively. Arthur prevented her from going to work, offering excuses like, "You don't need a salary anymore," or "Your role is as my wife." When Elara insisted, he made her wait hours for meetings she considered important. He manipulated schedules, situations, everything to maintain control. But Elara didn't yield. She was a firm rock against Arthur's attempts, and this only intensified his desire to break her. Their relationship began to transform into a minefield. Small provocations arose in trivial conversations, where Elara, with sharp words, dismantled all of Arthur's attempts to make her feel inferior or controlled. On a particularly tense evening, Arthur tried a more emotional approach. "I don't understand you, Elara," he said, staring at her with a mix of frustration and curiosity. "Any other woman would be happy living with this kind of luxury, but you act like it's not enough. What do you really want, Elara?" She, until then impassive, finally looked up, and her eyes shone with an intensity Arthur didn't expect. "What do I want? I want respect, Arthur. I am not a piece on your chessboard. You think you can control me with money, but you are mistaken. Money doesn't buy dignity or integrity. You can have all these things around you, but you are empty inside, and that's what you can't stand." Her words hit him like a punch to the stomach. For the first time, Arthur felt he might be losing more than just control. Elara wasn't just resisting his power, she was dismantling the facade he had built over the years, and it scared him. No one had ever challenged him like this. This, coupled with the fact that Elara had seen beyond his wealth, made Arthur feel exposed. But instead of backing down, Arthur decided to tighten his grip. He began to plan how to isolate Elara to make her realize that, without him, her life would be much more difficult. He cut contacts, closed doors that could advance her career, and even sabotaged important events she was organizing. However, Elara was not easily intimidated. With each blow, she got up, more determined than before, maintaining her dignity and refusing to be molded by Arthur. Then, one night, Elara played her own cards. "Arthur, you think you're in control, don't you?" she said calculatingly. "But what you don't know is that I also have a plan. Believe me, when the time is right, you'll see that this whole game is built on something much bigger than you ever imagined." Arthur looked at her in surprise. For the first time, he realized that he might have underestimated Elara, and for the first time, he felt the fear that, in the end, he might not be the winner of this game. Weeks passed like a tightly stretched rope, becoming tenser each day. Arthur, on the verge of losing his mind in his obsession with control, tried in every way to manipulate the situation to his advantage. But Elara resisted without hesitation. She was like a fortress he couldn't break down. Every attempt he made seemed only to reinforce her inner strength. There was something, however, that Arthur could not foresee. As time went on, he began to see Elara differently. It wasn't just about respecting her resilience, there was something deeper. She was doing something no other woman had ever done, disarming him emotionally, which left him restless and confused for the first time. There was a moment when he caught himself thinking of her not as part of a bet or an adversary, but as a person he genuinely wanted to be near. One night, after a heated argument, Arthur found himself alone in the spacious living room, looking at the city through the glass windows. The glow of the city lights used to give him a sense of power, but now everything seemed empty. He wondered why he felt this way. Elara was just a woman he had married for 6 months. She should have been just a piece in his game, nothing more. But the truth was that she was awakening something within him. He, who always exercised control over his emotions, now felt affected. Elara could see through his facade, and that made him feel vulnerable. As Arthur struggled with his thoughts, Elara went about her routine. She seemed more distant each day, almost as if she was waiting for something. Arthur felt as if there was an invisible wall between them, something he couldn't break through. He was being outplayed in his own game, and it tormented him. He didn't know if it was pride or fear of losing control, but something about Elara attracted him in a way he had never imagined. "Maybe you are different," Arthur said to Ethan, his friend who had proposed the bet during an informal dinner. "Normally, you would already have everything under control, but it seems this woman is challenging you in a way no one else has." Arthur forced a smile, unable to respond immediately. He hated admitting that Ethan was right, but it was obvious that something was changing. That night, Arthur came home determined to sort things out. He needed to get Elara out of his head. He needed to remember that this was just a contract, nothing more. He walked into the living room and found Elara on the sofa, reading a book, completely oblivious to his presence. "Can we talk?" Arthur asked, breaking the silence that had become habitual between them. Elara calmly looked up, closed her book, and faced him with a serene yet attentive expression. "Of course," she replied, as if she had been waiting for that moment. Arthur sat down opposite her, trying to find the right words. The tension between them was palpable. He knew he could no longer treat this marriage as a simple formality. Something was changing, and he needed to face it head on. "What are we doing here, Elara?" he asked, with a sincerity that even surprised him. "This started as a game, a bet, but I don't know what to do anymore." Elara stared at him for a few seconds before responding. "I'm not playing you anymore, Arthur. I never was." Her voice was calm, but full of meaning. "Initially, I accepted this marriage for reasons that go beyond you. I don't care about the money or your control over me.
I'm here for something bigger, and if you haven't realized that yet, maybe it's time to open your eyes." Arthur felt a tightness in his chest, as if she were revealing a secret he couldn't yet decipher. Frustration consumed him. "I know you have your secrets, Elara, but what bothers me is that the more I try to understand you, the more I realize I have no control, and I hate that." He suddenly stood up, unable to remain still, as if the weight of that revelation was unbearable. Elara remained calm, observing his every move. She slowly stood up and walked towards him, stopping a few centimeters away. Arthur felt his heart quicken. "Arthur," she began, her voice low and soft, "it's not about control. You've always lived trying to dominate everything and everyone. But with me, you'll learn that control isn't always the answer. Sometimes things just need to be as they are." Arthur looked into her eyes and, for an instant, felt a connection he had never before experienced. It was as if, for the first time, he was truly seeing Elara for who she was, and not as a piece in his game. "So, what do you want?" he asked, his voice now softer, almost a whisper. Elara smiled a mysterious smile that sent shivers down his spine. "I want you to discover that for yourself, Arthur." And with that, she walked away, leaving him there alone with his thoughts. In the following days, the distance between them seemed to grow, but in a strange way, Arthur began to feel closer to Elara than ever before. Obsessed with discovering what she was hiding, what her true intentions were, he felt he was losing control of himself and didn't want to admit it. But Elara was changing the way he saw the world, and the very idea that she could be affecting him so deeply terrified him. The 6 months of marriage were almost over, but for Arthur Sterling, Each day felt like an eternity. He could barely sleep. The impending revelation he felt he was about to uncover churned his stomach. Elara had become an enigmatic presence in his life. He thought of her not just as the woman he married for a bet, but as someone who knew something he couldn't comprehend. The obsession to understand Elara consumed him. He had tried everything to uncover the secret she held, but each answer only led to more questions. Arthur hired detectives to investigate her past and followed every possible lead. But everything seemed carefully orchestrated by Elara. It was as if she was always 2 steps ahead, controlling the game from the start. One night, after a business meeting, Arthur arrived at the penthouse later than usual. The balcony light was on, and Elara was sitting, contemplating Luminous City like a queen overseeing her empire. He knew that this night would be the day everything happened. Arthur felt she was ready to tell him what he so desperately wanted to know, but the fear of what he might hear tightened his throat as he walked towards her. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the silent room. Elara did not turn immediately. The silence was heavy, almost as if both knew something devastating was about to happen. "I need answers, Elara," Arthur said. His voice was firm, though his heart was racing. "I can't take this game anymore. You need to tell me the truth." Elara sighed slowly and stood up from the chair, turning to face him. Her eyes, usually calm and calculating, now showed an emotion Arthur couldn't decipher. There was something new in her, something dark and fierce. "The truth, Arthur?" She smiled bitterly, crossing her arms. "Do you really want the truth?" He nodded without hesitation, but the tension in the air was palpable. With each passing second, the situation worsened. Arthur prepared himself for any answer, but nothing could have prepared him for what was to come. He was about to hear, "You have no idea who I am," Elara began, her voice laden with chilling coldness. "You've always seen people as pawns on your chessboard, but this time, Arthur, you were the pawn. I've been playing this game from the beginning." Arthur felt a shiver run down his spine. The certainty he always had about the control he exercised began to crumble before her. He tried to speak, but Elara didn't let him. "Remember the name Vance?" she continued, her voice growing harsher. "Of course not. People like you never remember. My father owned a small company, one that struggled to survive, until you came along and destroyed it." Arthur took a step back, his eyes fixed on her, his mind racing, trying to connect the dots. "What?" Arthur stammered, confused. "What are you talking about?" Elara took a step forward, her eyes burning with anger and pain. "My father, Arthur, was an honest man, struggling to support our family until you showed up and took everything. You ruined him, Arthur. He lost everything, and it led to his death." Elara paused, her voice choked for a moment, before continuing, her eyes welling up. "My father killed himself because of your empire, your success at any cost." The impact of her words hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He was paralyzed as memories slowly resurfaced. So many things had happened, so many contracts, so many lives affected by his greedy hands. He couldn't remember all the companies he crushed to reach the top, but now, suddenly, everything was falling apart. Elara had returned to haunt him. He tried to interrupt, desperate, but she raised her hand to stop him. "No," she shouted, her anger boiling. "You have no idea what you caused. It's not just about money, Arthur. It's about destroyed lives. You took my father from me, the only person I had in the world, and while you prospered, my mother and I sank into debt and despair. You lived your life in luxury, and we barely had enough to eat." Arthur was completely stunned. He wanted to speak to defend himself, but no words came out. All he could do was stand still, staring at her as the weight of guilt overwhelmed him. "But I planned everything," Elara continued, her tone now more controlled, but still laden with resentment. "When I learned of your bet, I saw my chance. I approached you on purpose. I accepted the bet because I wanted you to feel at least a fraction of what I felt. I wanted you to know what it was like to be deceived, manipulated, and left powerless." He felt his body tremble. He always thought he was in control, always believed he would emerge victorious. But now the situation had reversed, and he was the target, and Elara, the player, controlled the entire board. "Elara," Arthur began to speak, but his voice was weak. I didn't know. I didn't know you were—" Elara interrupted him, stepping closer until she was face to face with him. "You never knew because you never cared. You destroyed lives without a second thought. And now I'm here not to destroy you, but to ensure you never forget what you did. I want you to feel the pain you caused, and that pain will haunt you for the rest of your life." Elara's words hit him like a sentence. Arthur found himself confronted with something he had never experienced before, the reality of the consequences of his actions. The weight of guilt was overwhelming, and he knew at that moment that he had lost much more than a simple bet. He had lost something he could never recover. Elara walked away. The silence that echoed through the penthouse made Arthur's legs weaken, and he collapsed onto the sofa, speechless and without answers. All that remained was emptiness. Elara's revelation echoed in Arthur's mind like a relentless storm. Every word she uttered shattered the world he thought he knew. The woman he thought he could manipulate, whom he considered just a piece in his game of power and bets, had just flipped the entire board. For the first time, Arthur was truly out of control. Elara, however, gave him no time to process the situation. After revealing the truth about the destruction of her family and her father's suicide, she left him alone in the room, consumed by his own guilt. Arthur remained motionless. The air in the penthouse felt suffocating, as if everything around him was crumbling. He wanted to talk to her, to apologize, to explain the inexplicable, but the truth was that no words came to mind. How could he justify something so cruel, something that caused so much pain? In the days following her revelation, Elara did exactly what Arthur deeply feared. She completely ignored him. Her presence was a constant reminder of the pain he had caused, but she walked past him as if he were invisible, as if his existence was no more than a shadow. At breakfast, she sat in silence, barely raising her eyes when he tried to speak. His words died in the air, unable to break the barrier she had built between them. Arthur, who was used to commanding the space, to being the center of attention, was now being ignored in his own home. The lack of attention was unbearable. Elara talked to the staff, handled her personal affairs, but with Arthur, it was different, as if he didn't exist. The weight of this forced silence was slowly destroying the man he thought he was. Elara, he tried to call her one morning as she prepared to leave. "We need to talk." She stopped immediately, turning her back to him as she adjusted her coat. The silence in the air became even heavier, and Arthur anxiously awaited some reaction. Any word, even if an anger, would have been better than indifference. But Elara said nothing, simply left, closing the door softly. Arthur was left with the echo of the sound in his mind, the pain of being ignored by someone he was beginning to see no longer as an adversary, but as something much more than a simple opponent. It was something new for him, who was accustomed to controlling and winning. But now he was the one being manipulated, punished with silence and contempt. Every day, every moment she left him alone, the feeling of powerlessness grew, and this was just the beginning. Elara was not content with silence. She began to actively undermine Arthur's confidence with small gestures. At work, he began to notice that important meetings were being rescheduled without prior notice. Suddenly, his decisions began to be questioned, and projects he had started mysteriously began to fail. He knew it was Elara's doing, even if she would never admit it. Arthur felt her influence in every move, as if she were pulling the invisible strings that kept his life in order. At home, things were getting even worse. Elara adopted a posture of absolute contempt, deliberately distancing herself. She stopped responding to all of Arthur's attempts at reconciliation, stopped sitting with him at meals, and avoided any conversation beyond the superficial. When he followed her, trying to sort things out, Elara responded with cold stares, as if his presence were an annoyance. One evening, Arthur found her in the living room reading a book. The scene seemed peaceful, but he knew that moment of calm was a silent trap. He sat on the sofa, trying once more. "Speak, Elara," he began, his voice low, almost pleading. "I know I've done horrible things. I know I've caused you a lot of pain. But please, can we try to resolve this? Can we?" Elara closed the book slowly, without looking at him. When she finally looked up, her face was so cold that it made him shiver. "Do you think there's still something to say, Arthur?" she asked, with a bitter laugh. "After everything you've done, words are useless." "I was wrong, Elara. I know it," Arthur insisted, getting up from the sofa and approaching her, desperate for any kind of connection. "I would do anything to fix what I've done. I can change, I swear." She finally looked at him, her gaze penetrating as if daring him to keep his promises. She said, slowly rising, "Do you think changing now will erase everything, bring my father back, fix the years we spent suffering because of you?" "No, Arthur, it won't." She moved closer, and Arthur felt himself sinking, crushed by the intensity of her gaze. "What you do now is not for me, it's for you. You will carry this weight, this guilt, for the rest of your life." Arthur remained silent for a while. It was the first time he realized there would be no easy redemption, no instant forgiveness. He wanted to fight for something that could be fixed, but Elara was beyond any simple repair. In the days that followed, Elara began to intensify her punishments. Arthur was met with looks of contempt whenever he passed her, and his frustration turned into despair. He tried in every possible way to show her that he was changing, that he wanted to be better, but all his attempts were met with indifference or sarcasm. One night, after a disastrous meeting at work where an important project was sabotaged, Arthur came home and found Elara on the phone, laughing. He heard fragments of the conversation and realized she was discussing his decisions at work. He knew it was her, Elara, who was destroying everything he had worked for, but in such a subtle and calculated way that no one but him would notice, and she made him suffer in silence. When Elara hung up the phone, Arthur was waiting in the living room. He stared at her with an exhausted expression, full of repressed anger, but also pain. "You're destroying everything, aren't you?" he said, his voice low, but with an evident tone of frustration. "You're destroying my life." Elara looked at him with an impassive expression, crossing her arms. "Destroying your life?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm just giving back what you gave me. Don't worry, Arthur. I won't ruin you financially. That would be too simple. I want you to live with the pain. I want you to feel every small loss, just as I felt. I want you, every day, to watch everything you've built crumble and know it's your fault." Arthur felt the ground disappear beneath his feet once again. It was a nightmare. He had always been the winner, always the man who controlled people's destinies, but now he was the target of a cold and meticulous revenge. Elara didn't want to destroy him all at once. She wanted him to suffer day after day, with every small defeat, with every look of contempt, until nothing was left but regret. Weeks passed, and Elara continued to ignore and punish him. Arthur, once arrogant and confident, now roamed the house like a shadow of his former self, trying in every way to obtain a forgiveness he knew would never come. He tried to redeem himself, but his efforts were always insufficient. He was trapped in a cycle of guilt and pain, a cycle that Elara controlled perfectly, but the worst was yet to come. One night, Elara finally confronted him, this time with a coldness Arthur had never seen before. She approached him, sat on the sofa, exhausted and dejected, and uttered the words that would haunt him forever. "Arthur, you took something from me that I can never get back," she began, her voice calm but incisive. "Now I'm returning the favor, and you will live with it for the rest of your life." And with those words, Elara left him there, with nothing more to say. She didn't need to. The punishment was already underway, and Arthur knew he would never be the same again. Arthur Sterling felt trapped in a labyrinth of guilt and despair. Elara had succeeded in making him experience what that felt like. The weeks following Elara's revelation were unbearable, as she was out of control. Arthur was no longer the confident and arrogant man who believed he had control over everything around him. Now he was a shadow, a pale reflection of who he used to be. With each attempt to speak to Elara, he was met with cold stares, ignored and rejected. Her indifference consumed him from within. He couldn't sleep anymore, unable to think of anything but trying to fix what he had broken. But the weight of the truth in his past actions made the path seem almost impossible. However, something began to change in Arthur. He realized that his words no longer held any value. Apologies meant nothing to Elara. She needed to see a genuine change, a real transformation, and he was willing to do anything to prove it to her with actions, not empty promises. One morning, Arthur woke up determined. He knew he couldn't simply ask for forgiveness. He had to do something different. The first step would be to give Elara space. He needed her to see that he respected her time, that he wouldn't pressure her anymore. But he also knew he needed to show that he was still present in subtle yet significant ways. Arthur began to pay attention to the small details that made up Elara's life. He observed her daily routine, her preferences, and her tastes. He didn't follow her, didn't invade her space, but mentally noted everything she loved. Flowers, especially peonies. The smell of her morning coffee, always strong, without sugar. These details, which were once insignificant, were now the key to his attempt at reconnection. In the afternoon, Arthur went to one of the best florists in the city and bought a bouquet of peonies that he wouldn't use, as he knew Elara would reject them immediately. Then he delivered them directly to her, leaving the flowers on the kitchen table without a note, simple yet significant. He waited anxiously as he went out for a walk. When Elara returned, she found the bouquet and said nothing, but Arthur watched from the corner of his eye, noticing the exact moment she paused in front of the flowers. Her expression didn't change, but he saw that she picked up one of the flowers and smelled it. It was a small gesture, but for Arthur, it was a big one. The fact that Elara hadn't completely rejected them was progress. In the days that Arthur followed suit, remaining faithful to these small gestures, he carefully prepared the breakfast table, making strong coffee just right for her, as she liked it, and then left, making sure not to impose his presence. He always had small things within her reach that would bring her pleasure, without needing to force an encounter or a conversation. Slowly, he tried to show that he had changed, that he was paying attention, that he genuinely wanted to care for Elara. But Elara remained unyielding, maintaining the barrier between them. Arthur knew that crossing that barrier would take time, but he wouldn't give up. He was committed to showing her that he was different, that he could win her back, but on her terms and with respect for her. The space she needed was on a particularly cold night when things began to change. Elara was on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights. After hesitating for a few moments, Arthur walked up to her. He brought her a cup of hot tea, knowing she liked to drink something warm before bed. "I thought you might like something warm too," he said, keeping his voice calm and not imposing his presence. Elara said nothing at first, but took the cup, her eyes still fixed on the city ahead. Arthur stood beside her silently, trying only to be present without interrupting the silence between them, which was tense, but for the first time in weeks, it wasn't unbearable. It was as if something was changing, even if it was almost imperceptible. "Why are you doing this, Arthur?" Elara finally broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. Arthur knew this was it. He had a chance to speak, but he needed to be cautious. He took a deep breath before answering. "Because I realized that talking doesn't mean anything anymore," he began, looking at the horizon with her. "My words don't matter. No matter what I've done, it can't be fixed with apologies, but I'm trying to show that I'm changing. I want to be a better person, not just for you, but because I realized I need to be." Elara remained silent for a few more moments, still holding the teacup. The cold wind blew past them, but the tension seemed to lessen a bit. "You can't change the past, Arthur," she finally said, her voice softer than he expected. "I know," he replied sincerely, "but I can change the future." Elara looked at him for the first time that night. Arthur saw something different in her eyes. The hardness was still there, but there was a flicker of curiosity. She wasn't ready to forgive him completely, he knew that, but this was a crucial moment where he touched on something she might want to believe. In the days that followed, Arthur continued with his small gestures, but now there was a different energy between them. Elara still kept her distance, but she wasn't rejecting him as openly as before. She accepted the flowers and the cups of tea, and even allowed him to talk to her during breakfast, albeit briefly and superficially. The barriers were starting to lessen, albeit slowly. But the real test came one evening when Arthur was about to leave for a meeting. He was elegantly dressed for another business engagement when Elara entered the room. "Can you cancel your meeting?" she asked suddenly. Arthur stared at her, surprised. She had never shown any interest in his whereabouts since their relationship had ended. He hesitated, but then nodded, picking up his phone and canceling the meeting without a second thought. He thought it was the first time in weeks that Elara seemed willing to spend time with him, and he wasn't going to miss that opportunity for anything. On that occasion, they sat on the sofa a small distance from each other, but for the first time, the silence didn't feel uncomfortable. Elara seemed thoughtful, as if she was processing everything that had happened in recent months. "I'm still not ready to forgive you completely, Elara," he said, breaking the silence. "But you're showing me something different. I see that you're trying, and maybe this is the beginning of something." Arthur felt his heart race. He knew he couldn't rush things, but Elara's words were enough to keep his hope alive. He knew the path ahead would still be long, but he was willing to take every step if it meant earning her forgiveness and perhaps her love. That night, the conversation continued peacefully, with both of them talking about trivial things, but for Arthur, it was a victory. He was slowly rebuilding something with patience. Elara stopped being an untouchable figure. She was starting to lower her guard, and Arthur would not make the mistake of underestimating her again. A shadow hung over them. Arthur knew Elara had not yet revealed everything. There was something she was still holding back, and he needed to be prepared to face the situation. But for now, the fact that Elara was willing to talk was enough. The weeks that followed, even with the tranquility, were a mix of tension, and for the first time, Arthur felt he was making progress with Elara, as she no longer treated him with absolute coldness, but also without opening up completely. There was a hesitation in the air, a kind of waiting that made him apprehensive. He knew he was being tested and was prepared for it. What he didn't know was that something much bigger was about to be revealed. Arthur dedicated himself entirely to proving to Elara that he was a changed man. He canceled his work commitments to spend more time at home, ensuring he was available for her without pressuring her or demanding immediate answers. Small gestures like making breakfast together or talking about trivial matters in the evening became part of their routine. Gradually, the ice in their relationship began to melt, and Arthur realized that Elara no longer treated him the same way. Despite the disdain, something still bothered him, despite the progress he felt. Elara was keeping a secret. She remained reserved at certain times, avoiding deeper conversations about the past or the future. It was as if she was waiting for the right moment to speak, but Arthur didn't know what that moment was. One quiet night, as the rain gently tapped against the penthouse windows, Arthur noticed a change in Elara's behavior. Her demeanor seemed more introspective, more distant than usual, as if she were lost in her thoughts. He tried not to pressure her, but curiosity consumed him. What was she hiding? What hadn't been said yet? Finally, when the silence became unbearable, Arthur broke the barrier. "Elara," he began, his voice low, almost apprehensive. "I know there's still something between us that you haven't told me. I can feel it." He looked into her eyes, waiting for any sign of reaction. "Please, if there's still something you're hiding, Elara, I need to know." Elara, who was sitting on the sofa with her hands clasped in her lap, initially took a deep breath, avoiding Arthur's gaze. The silence that followed was agonizing, but Arthur knew he needed to be patient and that forcing anything now could undo all the progress they had made. Finally, she looked at him. Her eyes reflected a mix of pain and determination. "You're right, Arthur," she said, her voice soft but laden with emotion. "I've been keeping something I didn't think I could tell you until now, but perhaps it's time." Arthur felt the air tighten around him. Whatever it was, he knew it would change everything. He leaned slightly forward, awaiting the revelation that was about to happen, but also dreading what he might hear. "Do you remember the company you destroyed, the one my father ran?" Elara began, her tone firm, but her expression showing deep pain. "I told you that you destroyed our family, and that's true, but that wasn't all you destroyed." Arthur looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Elara lowered her eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall, and when she finally spoke again, her voice was lower, almost a whisper. "I was pregnant, Arthur." These words hit Arthur like an overwhelming weight. He blinked, trying to process what he had just heard, but he couldn't believe it. "What?" he whispered, stunned. "I was pregnant when it all happened," Elara continued, her eyes still fixed on the floor. "And when we lost everything, when my father was gone, the pressure and all the stress, I lost the baby." Arthur felt as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. He could barely breathe. The impact of the revelation hit him like a punch to the gut, something he could never have imagined. The guilt he had already felt and that had consumed him for weeks now seemed to grow even further. He destroyed not just a company, not just a family, but also a life. "Elara," he tried to speak, but his voice was choked. "I didn't do anything. I never could have imagined." She finally looked at him, and the tears she had been holding back now streamed down her cheeks. Even with her face etched with pain, there was an undeniable strength in her. "No, you didn't know," Elara said, her voice full of hurt and resentment. "Because you never cared to know. You destroyed lives, Arthur, and you didn't even look at the people in your path. I lost my baby, and you went on with your life as if nothing had happened." Her words cut Arthur like knives. He wanted to do something, say something that could fix what he had done, but he knew that nothing he said or did would erase what Elara had been through. "I have no words," Arthur finally managed to say, his voice weak and full of despair. "I know what I did is unforgivable, and I will never forgive myself for it. But please, Elara, I would do anything to try and fix things." Elara watched him for a long moment, and the silence that followed was heavy. Arthur knew that nothing he said could bring the baby back or fix the past, but he was desperate to find a way to at least alleviate some of Elara's pain. Elara finally took a deep breath and closed her eyes, as if making an internal decision. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. The pain was still there, but there was something else too, something Arthur couldn't quite identify.
"I don't know if I can forgive you, Arthur," she said honestly. "What you did was devastating." But she paused as if pondering her next words. "I see you're trying, and maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that one day I can find a way to move on. But it won't be easy. It won't be quick." Arthur nodded, feeling a mix of hope and despair. He knew the path ahead would be difficult, but at least Elara was willing to consider the possibility of a different future. "I'll do whatever it takes," Arthur replied, his voice filled with determination. "No matter how long it takes, I will prove that I've changed. I can be someone you trust, someone you might one day forgive." Elara looked at him, and for the first time, there was a small opening. It wasn't complete forgiveness, it wasn't the end of all the pain, but it was something. It was a beginning. "We'll see," Elara said with a soft sigh. "We'll see if you can." The silence that followed between them was heavy, but also full of possibilities. Elara stood up and walked towards the door, leaving Arthur alone on the couch. But this time, he didn't feel the same despair as before. He knew there was a long journey ahead, but at least now, there was hope. The days that followed Elara's revelation would be transformative for Arthur. Every word she had said bothered him deeply, as he felt the guilt for all the pain he had caused. But instead of sinking into regret, Arthur decided that the pain and guilt would be his fuel, for he didn't just want to win back Elara's love. He wanted to become a man worthy of her respect. That morning, Arthur took the initiative to show respect to all the people he had hurt throughout his ruthless business career. He made the decision not to stand still, letting the past condemn him forever. He would start over from scratch, and the first step would be to repair as much of the damage as possible to prove to Elara that he had truly changed. As he began to track down the families whose lives had been destroyed by his business, on his first visit, he went to the family of a former competitor whose business he had ruined years ago. He arrived unannounced, knocking on the door of a modest house in a neighborhood that was far from the opulence of his own life. The man who answered the door was a stranger to Arthur, but the pain in his eyes was evident. "I'm Arthur Sterling," Arthur said, his voice filled with sincerity, barely recognizing himself. "I'm here to apologize." The man stared at him for a long moment, disbelief evident in his eyes. "Apologize?" he laughed bitterly. "What will that change now?" "I can't change the past," Arthur replied firmly, "but I can try to help rebuild the future. I'm here to offer compensation to help fix what I destroyed." In the following weeks, Arthur continued his journey of redemption, going door to door, meeting with families, and offering not just money, but also his time in an effort to truly understand the impact of his actions. He began donating large sums to small businesses that had been harmed by his corporate maneuvers, creating recovery programs to help other entrepreneurs get back on their feet. Elara watched it all from a distance. At first, she remained cautious, observing Arthur's behavior. She knew he was trying to change, but forgiveness would not come easily. However, as the days passed and Arthur demonstrated a true transformation, she began to feel something new for him, a renewed respect and admiration, something she hadn't expected. He was changing, and he was proving that his words were no longer empty. One evening, Elara was on the balcony watching the city lights when Arthur silently approached her. He had just returned from another of his reconciliation visits, and his expression was now different, calmer, more resolute. "How was today?" Elara asked, looking at the horizon. Arthur sighed deeply, carrying months of effort and regret. "Every conversation, every apology is a step towards becoming a better person, not just for you, Elara, but for myself too." She finally turned to look at him. There was something different in her gaze too. The hardness that had always been there and the anger she held seemed to dissipate in that moment. She realized that Arthur was truly changing. He was no longer the arrogant man who had entered her life with a wager, but someone striving to be different, someone willing to fight for them. "I can see that, Arthur," Elara said, her voice soft but firm, "and I want you to know that I'm ready to try. Perhaps it's time for us to leave the past behind and build something new."
Arthur felt a wave of relief he hadn't even known he was waiting for. Those words meant more to him than he himself could have imagined. Elara would be willing to give them a chance, not as a couple forced by a bet, but as two individuals. With the 6-month marriage agreement coming to an end, people were ready to start over. But something surprising began to happen. Elara and Arthur grew closer. Their conversations became less formal, less tense, and they shared moments of laughter and connection. And slowly, love began to blossom in a way neither of them had ever expected. They were no longer the distant couple trapped in an arranged marriage. Now they were two people rediscovering each other in a genuine and sincere way. One evening, as the 6-month period was about to conclude, Arthur prepared a special dinner. He knew this moment would be crucial. They had come so far, and he didn't want the marriage to end there. "Elara," he said during dinner, his voice filled with nervousness, "I didn't expect to feel this way. Our agreement is almost over, but I don't want this to end. I've fallen in love with you, Elara, truly, and I want us to continue, but now as a real couple, without bets, without games." Elara looked at him, surprised by the sincerity of his words, but also with a warmed heart. She realized she also felt something for him, something that had grown silently in recent weeks. They started as adversaries, but now they were deeply and truly in love. "I love you too, Arthur," Elara said with a soft yet firm voice. "I want to try. I want to build something with you, but this time as a real couple, without bets, without games." Elara looked at him, surprised by the sincerity of his words, but also with a warmed heart. She realized she also felt something for him, something that had grown silently in recent weeks. They started as adversaries, but now they were deeply and truly in love. "I love you too, Arthur," Elara said with a soft yet firm voice. "I want to try. I want to build something with you, but this time as a real couple." Those moments were pure. The happiness was mutual, for they had overcome obstacles that once seemed impossible, and now they were ready for. Months later, as they continued forward together, Elara began to notice something different. She felt morning sickness, something she wasn't used to regarding her body. Only after a medical examination was she certain she was pregnant, and when Elara told Arthur, his reaction was pure joy. They embraced, laughing and crying at the same time, remembering everything they had been through, all the pain and suffering that now seemed to indicate that in that moment of renewal, they were ready to start a new life together, with a new family on the way. "I want to do this right this time," Arthur said, knowing exactly what he needed to do. "I want to marry you again, but this time it's for real. Not because of a bet, not for any other reason than loving you and wanting to spend my life with you, Elara." She smiled, tears of happiness mixing with his. "I want that too, Arthur," she said. They agreed that this time it would be a real marriage, a new beginning, their new marriage. It was an intimate celebration with a few close friends and family, without superficial glamour, without business haste or bets. Elara and Arthur united by true love, ready to face the future together. Arthur knew he still had much to prove, not only to Elara, but also to himself and to the families with whom he had broken ties in the past. Now he had something to fight for, a new life alongside the woman he loved and the child they were expecting. And in that moment, he was determined to be the man Elara deserved and the father his child would need. As they danced slowly at the end of the ceremony, Elara rested her head on Arthur's chest and whispered, "Who would have thought it all started with a bet?" Arthur smiled, hugging her tight. "Who would have thought it would be the best bet I ever made?" And with a future full of love, redemption, and hope, they were ready for the next chapter of their lives. What do you think? Did Elara make the right choice to forgive and marry Arthur? Share your opinion in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. Your opinion and participation mean a lot to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives like this. Thanks for watching.